So, the morning of September 16, 1920, began with the familiar sounds of a city awakening. On Wall Street, the heart of American finance, the day promised prosperity and routine. The air was still warm, carrying the last hints of summer. Office clerks hurried along narrow cobblestone streets, messengers hurried along the same streets. The House of Morgan at 23 Wall Street stood as a powerful symbol. Its stone facade gleamed in the morning light. Inside, men prepared for another day of trading and transactions. Ticker tape machines were being prepped to spit out the day's fortunes and failures. Young runners, some just teenagers, gathered on the sidewalks. They joked and chatted, honestly unaware of the history about to unfold. Down on the street, an old horse-drawn wagon came to a slow, unremarkable stop. It parked across from the J.P. Morgan and Company building. The driver climbed down and melted into the crowd. The horse stood patiently, head bowed, oblivious. The clock on nearby Trinity Church began to strike noon. Its chimes rang out, marking the midday pause. Workers thought of lunch. Messengers waited for the final trades before the break. The sun was high, casting short shadows on the street. For a few brief moments, everything was perfectly normal. Then, in an instant, that peaceful, ordinary moment was shattered forever. At 1 minute past noon, the world on Wall Street came apart. The horse-drawn wagon erupted in a deafening, terrifying blast. It was a sound that ripped through the very fabric of the city. A massive fireball shot upwards, followed by a thick, dark plume of smoke that blotted out the midday sun. The explosion sent a shockwave tearing through the financial district, its force so powerful it could be felt miles away. Windows on buildings blocks away shattered instantly, raining down countless shards of glass onto the screaming crowds below. The ground shook violently, as if the island of Manhattan itself had been struck by a terrible earthquake. The scene transformed from one of order to one of unimaginable horror. The air, once clear, was now filled with dust-smoke pulverized debris. Shrapnel, made from the wagon's iron sash weights, flew like bullets in every direction. People who had been walking down the street just moments before were thrown to the ground. The powerful facade of the House of Morgan, the New York Stock Exchange, were pockmarked and scarred by the force of the blast. The initial silence of shock was quickly replaced by screams, cries for help, the sounds of collapsing masonry. In the immediate aftermath, chaos reigned supreme. Survivors, dazed and bleeding, stumbled through the wreckage. They tried to help the wounded, pulling them from beneath fallen debris and shattered carts. The street was a devastating landscape of bodies, broken glass, the mangled remains of the horse and wagon. The investigation began almost immediately. A frantic search for clues amidst the rubble and chaos. The New York Police Department, alongside the Federal Bureau of Investigation, descended upon Wall Street. Their first task was to piece together the bomb itself. Investigators sifted through every fragment of debris, looking for any hint of the device's construction. They found pieces of the wagon, the harness, and tragically, the horseshoes from the horse that had pulled the deadly cargo. The most significant clue was the shrapnel, hundreds of pounds of cast iron sash weights designed to cause maximum carnage. This was a bomb built to kill. The search for the culprits was a hunt for ghosts. No one claimed responsibility. There was no manifesto, no triumphant declaration. The bomber had vanished without a trace. The police had very little to go on. They interviewed hundreds of witnesses, but descriptions of the wagon's driver were vague and contradictory. Some said he was dark-haired, others said he was fair. He was a faceless man who had delivered death and then simply walked away, swallowed by the city he had just attacked. The anonymity of the attacker made the crime feel even more sinister and terrifying. Suspicion quickly fell upon anarchists and radical leftists, particularly a group known as the Gallianists. These Italian anarchists, followers of Luigi Galliani, believed in propaganda of the deed, using violent acts to incite revolution against capitalist and government institutions. Just a day before the bombing, postal workers found flyers in a nearby mailbox with a chilling message: "Free the political prisoners or it will be sure death for all of you." Signed by the American anarchist fighters, these warnings seemed to be a direct link to the attack, pointing the investigation firmly in the direction of the Gallianists. Despite this promising lead, the case grew colder with each passing day. The police tracked down the blacksmith who had recently put new shoes on the horse, a crucial piece of evidence found at the scene. However, the blacksmith could not provide a useful description of the man who brought the horse to him. The police investigated known radicals and rounded up suspected anarchists, but they could never find enough evidence to charge anyone directly with the bombing. Key suspects, including a galleonist named Mario Buda, had managed to flee the country. The trail went cold, leaving the biggest criminal investigation in America at a frustrating dead end. In the face of such a shocking attack, New York City did not crumble. Instead, it showed remarkable resilience. The day after the bombing, the New York Stock Exchange opened on time. Officials wanted to send a clear message: the business of America would not be stopped by terror. J.P. Jack Morgan Jr., who had been out of the country during the attack, refused to repair the damage to his building's facade. The pockmarks and scars left by the shrapnel on 23 Wall Street were left untouched. They remain there to this day, a permanent, silent memorial to the victims, and a defiant symbol of Wall Street's endurance. The bombing ignited a wave of fear and anger across the country. It fueled the ongoing Red Scare, a period of intense anti-communist hysteria, anti-immigrant hysteria. The attack was seen as proof that dangerous foreign radicals were plotting to destroy the American way of life. This fear led to increased government surveillance and a crackdown on suspected leftists and immigrant communities. The bombing gave authorities a powerful justification to expand their powers. The Bureau of Investigation, a small agency at the time, grew in size and scope, laying the groundwork for the modern Federal Bureau of Investigation. Yeah, the FBI. The attack also fundamentally changed the nature of security in the financial district. Before 1920, Wall Street was a relatively open and accessible place. After the bombing, that changed forever. Private security forces were expanded, and the police increased their presence. The idea of protecting the nation's financial heart from internal threats became a top priority. The bombing introduced a new kind of fear into American life, the fear of anonymous, ideologically motivated violence in a public space. It was a dark turning point, forcing the country to confront a type of threat it had never truly faced before. Yet, as the years passed, the memory of the bombing began to fade from public consciousness. With no trial and no one held accountable, the story had no resolution. It became a historical footnote rather than a major event remembered by all. Other crises, like the Great Depression, World War II, soon captured the nation's attention. The Wall Street bombing of 1920 remains one of America's greatest unsolved mysteries. Over a century later, we are no closer to definitively knowing who drove that horse-drawn wagon to its deadly halt. The lack of a conviction has allowed the event to exist in a state of perpetual suspense. The primary theory continues to point to Italian anarchists, specifically the galleonists, who had the motive and the means. The cryptic flyers found just before the attack serve as a tantalizing yet ultimately inconclusive piece of evidence. The bomber's escape, likely back to Italy, ensured that the full truth would be buried with him. The legacy of the bombing is complex and far-reaching. It was a pivotal moment in the history of domestic terrorism in the United States. It demonstrated how a simple, low-tech weapon could be used to cause mass casualties and sow widespread fear. The attack provided the catalyst for the expansion of federal law enforcement and intelligence agencies, shaping the future of national security. The government's response, wrapped up in the Red Scare, also served as a cautionary tale about the dangers of trading civil liberties for a sense of security, as anti-immigrant sentiment surged and many innocent people were targeted. The bombing also left an indelible physical mark. The scars on the old J.P. Morgan and Company building are a quiet but powerful testament to that violent day. They are a daily reminder that the history of Wall Street is not just one of wealth and power, but also of vulnerability and violence. For those who know the story, the marks transform the building from a simple architectural landmark into a living monument. They force us to remember the 38 people who lost their lives and the hundreds more who were injured, victims of a crime for which no one was ever brought to justice. Ultimately, the story of the 1920 Wall Street bombing matters because its echoes can be heard in our own time. It was an attack on a symbol of American capitalism driven by a radical ideology. It created a debate about security immigration, the balance of power between the government and its citizens. These are themes that continue to resonate deeply in 21st century America. The forgotten attack on Wall Street is more than just a cold case. It is a foundational story in the nation's long and complicated struggle with terror, a mystery that continues to hold valuable, if somber, lessons for today.